Hello and welcome to this video. This video is the first in a series that covers key topics found within Chapter 7 of your textbook. While these videos endeavor to cover many of the key points of the chapter, they do not necessarily cover all the key points contained within the textbook. Students are encouraged to read and study the entire chapter as they prepare for the chapter quiz. This video explores an issue about which many people experiencing a disaster question. That is, why can't the military help? The use of the military in disaster response has not had a consistent history. The military has been used in some disaster responses, but completely ignored in others. This video examines historic, legal, political, and social issues associated with the military's use in disaster response. Included in this video is a review of continuity of government, a discussion of military capabilities that may be helpful during a disaster, and an overview of military authority under the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878. Imagine that a catastrophic disaster has struck a major American city. Transportation systems are damaged. Communications are unreliable. Hospitals are overwhelmed. Thousands of residents need food, water, shelter, and medical care. Roads are blocked by debris, electrical service has failed, and local emergency responders have been working around the clock. Then, military resources begin arriving. Helicopters appear overhead. Military trucks transport supplies. Engineers begin clearing roads. Medical personnel establish temporary treatment facilities. Communications teams restore critical links, and National Guard personnel assist local authorities. At first glance, the solution seems obvious. If the military possesses the personnel, equipment, transportation, communications, and logistical capabilities needed to respond, why not simply put the military in charge? But that question raises one of the most important tensions in American emergency management. The issue is not simply whether the military can respond effectively. The larger questions are, when should the military become involved? How should it become involved? And under whose authority should military forces operate during a domestic disaster? Those questions bring together emergency management, national security, constitutional government, federalism, civil liberties, and the long-standing American tradition of civilian control. This video explores that relationship. To understand the military's role in modern emergency management, we need to review the historical role of the military in disasters. American emergency management did not develop exclusively from hurricanes, floods, earthquakes, and other natural disasters. Part of the system grew from civil defense and concerns about national security during the Cold War. During that period, the United States faced the possibility of nuclear attack. Government officials had to consider questions that went far beyond traditional disaster response. These questions included: how would government continue functioning after an attack? How would national leaders communicate? Where would essential officials relocate? And how would critical government operations continue if Washington, D.C. or other major governmental centers were attacked? These concerns helped connect civil defense, national security, and emergency management. When FEMA was established during the Carter administration, the agency inherited responsibilities associated with conventional emergency management, but it also received national security responsibilities. That history is important because it demonstrates something that remains true today. Emergency management and national security cannot always be separated into completely different categories. One example is continuity of government, commonly called COG. Continuity of government refers to programs designed to ensure that essential governmental leadership and functions continue during an extreme national crisis. Think about what would happen if a catastrophic event disrupted normal government operations. Government cannot simply close indefinitely. Someone must retain lawful authority. Critical decisions must still be made. Communications must continue. Essential public services must operate. Continuity activities, therefore, may include specialized communication systems, protective measures, relocation of key officials, and protection or sheltering of national leaders. This leads to an important question for emergency management students. Why should emergency managers understand continuity of government if many COG activities involve national security rather than traditional disaster response? One answer is that catastrophic disasters do not respect organizational boundaries. A major emergency can simultaneously become a public safety crisis, humanitarian crisis, infrastructure crisis, economic crisis, and national security concern. Emergency managers therefore need to understand how their responsibilities intersect with other government missions. Since a major disaster may also pose a national security issue, it is possible for the military to be involved in a disaster response. Further, for non-national security threat disasters, military organizations possess capabilities that can become extraordinarily valuable when civilian emergency management systems are overwhelmed. Consider search and rescue. Military aircraft, helicopters, specialized vehicles, and trained personnel may reach locations that civilian responders cannot easily access. Military medical personnel can provide emergency medical assistance. Military transportation assets can move personnel, equipment, food, water, medicine, generators, and other supplies into disaster areas. Military organizations can also assist with mass feeding and commodity distribution. They may provide hazardous material decontamination, temporary shelter support, firefighting assistance, debris removal, temporary bridge repair, security assistance, and support for utility restoration. But perhaps one of the military's greatest strengths is logistics. Disaster response is fundamentally a logistical challenge. Resources must be identified, transported, distributed, tracked, and sustained, and military organizations routinely conduct large-scale logistical operations. They possess transportation networks, communication systems, engineering capabilities, aviation assets, heavy equipment, organized command structures, and personnel trained to operate in dangerous and damaged environments. In some situations, military units can even operate with considerable independence from damaged local infrastructure. Imagine a community where electricity is unavailable, cellular communications have failed, roads are blocked, fuel supplies are limited, and local facilities have been damaged. Those conditions create enormous problems for civilian organizations. Military units, however, may arrive with their own communications, transportation, power generation, food, water, medical support, and logistical systems. That makes military assistance extremely valuable during catastrophic disasters. But there is an important distinction. Military involvement generally supplements civilian emergency management. It does not permanently replace it. The military may be extremely effective at moving supplies, clearing debris, providing transportation, constructing temporary infrastructure, or supporting emergency operations. But disaster recovery can continue for months or years. Military organizations are generally not designed to rebuild thousands of privately owned homes, compensate individual households, permanently operate emergency shelters, resettle displaced populations, restore private businesses, or administer long-term disaster assistance programs. Those responsibilities typically remain with civilian government agencies, nonprofit organizations, businesses, insurers, and communities. So students should distinguish between immediate response capability and long-term recovery responsibility. This raises the issue of how involved should the military be in catastrophic disaster response. There are strong arguments for greater military involvement during catastrophic disasters. Supporters point to the military's command and control systems. Military organizations have clearly established leadership structures. They possess enormous logistical networks. They have aviation and engineering capabilities. They have transportation resources. They have trained personnel who can operate in dangerous environments. And perhaps most importantly, they can mobilize substantial resources when civilian capabilities have been exhausted. During a truly catastrophic event, those characteristics can save lives. So a fundamental question is, why not expand the military's domestic disaster role? The answer is because doing so introduces serious legal, constitutional, and political concerns. Among those concerns are civil liberties and civilian control of government. There are also questions involving federalism. Emergency management in the United States traditionally begins locally and then moves upward as additional assistance is required. Putting federal military forces in charge could potentially shift authority away from governors, mayors, local emergency managers, police departments, sheriffs, and other civilian officials. Other concerns involve search and seizure, arrest authority, rules of engagement, use of force, accountability, and the possibility of militarizing domestic law enforcement. Military organizations and civilian police agencies have different missions. A military force is not simply a larger police department. That distinction becomes especially important when military personnel are operating among American civilians. Consider this question: should the military ever become the lead organization responsible for managing a catastrophic domestic disaster? There is no simple answer. A catastrophic event may create circumstances in which military capabilities are essential to saving lives. At the same time, American constitutional traditions place tremendous importance on civilian authority and civilian control of government. The challenge is finding the appropriate balance. That balance becomes particularly important when we discuss the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878. Posse Comitatus is a legal term derived from common law. This term refers to the practice of a government official conscripting able-bodied individuals to assist with keeping the peace and enforcing laws. Anyone who has watched an old Western movie may have seen sheriffs raising posses to go after the bad guys. The historical principle behind Posse Comitatus reflects a long-standing American concern about using standing military forces to exercise domestic police authority. The basic idea is that military forces and civilian law enforcement serve different functions. Active duty federal military personnel generally cannot simply assume ordinary civilian law enforcement responsibilities such as investigating civilians, making arrests, or incarcerating individuals unless specifically authorized by law. These resentment towards the use of federal troops to engage in domestic law enforcement activities is rooted in history. After the Civil War ended in 1865, federal troops garrisoned all the major cities of the South. These troops ran the cities, served as their police forces, and dispensed justice according to military rules and law. Because of much blame by the federal troops toward Southerners for starting the war, federal troops were abusive to the Southern population. This abuse led to widespread resentment for the use of federal troops to garrison and run U.S. cities. Later, President Rutherford Hayes used federal troops to quell the Great Railroad Strike of 1877. The use of federal troops to essentially serve as a police force and strike busters generated great resentment among politicians. Therefore, in 1878, Congress passed the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 as an amendment to the Army Appropriations Bill. Initially, this act only affected the Army. Later, the act was amended to include the U.S. Air Force. The Navy and Marines are covered under a different legislative act. The National Guard and U.S. Coast Guard are exempt from the Posse Comitatus Act. Here is the key principle to remember. Military support during disasters does not automatically equal police authority. Military forces can provide tremendous assistance during disasters without automatically receiving the powers of civilian police officers. For example, Military personnel might transport supplies, provide medical assistance, operate aircraft, establish communications, clear debris, construct temporary infrastructure, or perform search and rescue missions. Those activities are very different from investigating crimes or arresting civilians. This distinction helps preserve the traditional boundary between civilian government and military authority. National Guard personnel occupy a unique position in the American governmental system because their legal authority can change depending upon their duty status. When National Guard forces operate under state authority, they remain under the authority of the governor. They are considered to be similar to a state militia rather than part of the Army or Air Force. Under those circumstances, National Guard personnel may perform certain functions that federal active duty military personnel generally cannot perform under posse comitatus restrictions. This distinction becomes extremely important during disasters. A governor may activate the National Guard to support evacuations, transportation, supply distribution, security, search and rescue, or other emergency operations. Because the National Guard can operate under state authority, it provides governors with access to military capabilities while maintaining an important connection to civilian state government. The National Guard therefore occupies a critical position between civilian emergency management and federal military capability. In summary, let us return to our original scenario. A catastrophic disaster has overwhelmed a community. The military possesses helicopters, trucks, engineers, medical personnel, communication systems, heavy equipment, logistical networks, and thousands of trained personnel. Should those resources be used? In many circumstances, absolutely. But emergency management is not simply about possessing resources. It is also about authority, responsibility, law, and accountability. Military organizations can provide extraordinary capabilities during catastrophic disasters, but those capabilities exist within a governmental system that traditionally places domestic emergency management under civilian leadership. That is why the central question is not, can the military respond? Clearly, it can. The more important questions are, when should it respond? What missions should it perform? Who should authorize those missions? What legal limitations should apply? And perhaps most importantly, how do we use the extraordinary capabilities of the military while preserving civilian authority, federalism, constitutional rights, and democratic accountability? Understanding that balance is essential for anyone preparing to work in emergency management. Because during the next catastrophic disaster, emergency managers may not simply be coordinating police officers, firefighters, public works departments, hospitals, nonprofits, and FEMA. They may also be coordinating with one of the most powerful militaries in the world. This military has the capability to support the continuity of government. This ensures that essential governmental functions continue. However, it is important that there are legal constraints upon the use of the military, most notably the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878. While the military can do much to aid in a disaster, it generally cannot serve as a domestic police force. However, the National Guard provides a stopgap measure. As long as the National Guard remains a state asset and under the control of a state's governor, the Posse Comitatus Act does not apply. This provides the state with the benefits of the military. However, if the National Guard is federalized by the President, then the Posse Comitatus Act does apply. Thanks for watching.